are. And so, Bob, I'm really happy to be closing out the expo with you. And, you know, we can start with the slide that has, Bob, you can just, you know, tell us what we're doing here. We're you know, talking
Well, John
about.
called me up. John called me up and said, I want you to come on to a, what are we calling this? Our, what are we calling this?
Coffee hour.
Yeah, coffee hour thing.
Yeah.
At the end of the annual conference and talk about your subterranean greenhouse. And I said, well, John, and tell us all about your subterranean greenhouse. And I said, well, John, it's not built yet. He said, well, that's okay. We can talk about the plans. And I said, okay, fine. So here I am. We're talking more in theory than we are in, at least from my side, in actual experience. But we can talk about plans and ideas. And if anyone has any suggestions or questions, just butt in any time. Raise your hand and we'll find you. I'm not always looking at the chat boxes, but maybe Robin can monitor that for us, or wave her hand or inject if something comes up that somebody wants to ask something that we don't see. So anyway, that was my introduction, and I sent John a picture of where we are now. Yeah, there it is.
Which is right there.
And I was hoping to get started a little earlier in the fall than we did. We got started at the 1st of October instead of the 1st of September. And this year that was a real problem because we had we had about 2 foot of snow that hit us the middle of October, and that was the end of our project. And we've had nice weather ever since, actually. So we had 2 big storms that most of you in Montana experienced in the fall. And now that winter's getting close, we're having fall. And most of our snow is now gone, except for a few drifts. And so what you can see here is a hole dug about 5 feet deep, about 90 feet long, about 11 feet wide. And that will be the bottom of my greenhouse where the trees will be planted. I have in mind, let's see, what can I show? You see the 2, some of it's caving in a little bit. So we're gonna have a little more work to do in the spring to clean this up and get the cement going. But you see on the left-hand side, there's 2 areas where soil is kind of sifting in, and you see some black pipes there. We did get most of our pipes put in the ground, and these black pipes are 4-inch pipes with slotted pipes so that any condensation can drip out of them. And they go out 250 feet and make a big loop and come in one end of the greenhouse and come out the other end of the 2 rooms. We'll have 2 rooms in the greenhouse, but they're 10 feet deep, and there's 1 pipe for every 6 feet of greenhouse. And the theory is that they'll be down where the below the frost, well below the frost line. They'll bring in air temperature that's pretty close to the matches the soil temperature, which is around 50 degrees at that depth. And so they'll be involved with heating in the winter because it'll be colder than 50 degrees. And we're trying to adjust, and cooling in the summer, but it will still be with the same 50 degrees. This won't be our only cooling mechanism in the summer, but we are figuring it will be our only heating mechanism in the winter. And so we got that much done. And those pipes, as I said, will go into 2 rooms. One room will be 1/3 of the greenhouse, about 30 feet long. And that's going to be my peach room, which will be conditioned to mimic zone 6 or 7, where I can grow stone fruits that we can't grow here in Montana, where we're zone 3, at least in northern Montana. And the stone fruits I'm looking at are things like cherries, sweet cherries, peaches, nectarines, apricots, things like that. The larger room, which is further down the hole that you can see here, will be my orange room. And that will be planted with citrus, bananas, avocados, things that will never freeze. And we'll keep that room mimicking about temperatures in zone 9 or 10. So in mid-Florida, southern Texas, southern California, southern Arizona, that region of the country. And that's what we'll mimic. And there'll be a dome, plastic dome that goes on this. The south side will be plastic. The north side will be kind of a reflective material that reflect the sunlight into the hole. And that'll sit about 5 or 6 or 7 feet on top of the 6-foot hole. So I have around, and then there'll be another foot or two of footings that'll go on this. So I'll have about a headroom of growing space of about 13 to 14 feet from the bottom to the top of this greenhouse. So that's what you're looking at here. That's not the whole thing, but any questions about that part?
Why in the world did you decide to do this, Bob?
Oh, well, that's a good question. Because my grandparents and my parents and even my sister all used to go to Arizona for the winter. Well, we're not planning to go to Arizona and have a second house in Arizona. So I decided to bring a little Arizona to me. And I wanted to have someplace I can go when the wind's blowing and it's blizzardy and cold, and even when the sun's shining, you can't go out and enjoy it if it's 20 below. And if I had a place in a room where I could sit down and relax and be surrounded by orange trees and blooming fragrance of orange blossoms and other fun things, I thought that would be nearly as rejuvenating as being in Arizona. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. And where did you get the idea for this?
Well, I saw an ad for a place called the Greenhouse in the Snow in Lyons, Nebraska. And I started studying it, and it was developed by a retired post carrier, a letter carrier. And after he retired, he started experimenting with these subterranean greenhouses, and it's in the panhandle of Nebraska. And so it's up in the northern tier of Nebraska. And I went and visited him 3 times now. I've been down there to see him, and he has his greenhouses dug down 4 feet, but he said I would recommend where we are further north and colder, that we would go down 5 feet and give a little more stability to the temperature inside for the winter. And I've been following his pattern and got his kit, which he sent out, and that's kind of what I'm following.
Yeah, great. And so he's doing something called, what that people say is not useful, not doable, won't work, called low-grade geothermal, as far as I understand it. And everybody was saying you have to convert that low grade into high grade in order to make it work. And he just waited and waited and waited for experts to give him a good reason why it wouldn't work, and they never did. And so his wife said, we can't sit around forever, we have to do it. And so they built it, and it works. Works amazingly well, and with very little input. What do you imagine is going to be your outside inputs on this?
Well, what Russ told me in Nebraska, he's looking at maybe $1 a day to run his fans. And everything will be set up on thermostats, so even the fans don't run all the time. They'll only run as needed when it gets too hot or too cold. And so the inputs are minimal. I'm spending a little more money and constructing mine by putting in cement walls, because I've seen what happens to root cellars in this area, that after a few years, the walls, which are sod walls, start to fall in. And I didn't want that, and I wanted to have something that was a little more permanent. Russ's idea is to have this whole project be economical enough for anyone to create it. The kit, of course, it depends on the size. The size I got is 90 feet long, and it cost me around $16,000 or so. You can buy smaller ones than that are shorter. The width is always about 17 feet is the total width, but you can buy them in 6-foot lengths. And I think he recommends a minimum of, I think he recommends between 60 and 100 feet is the size that works the best. If you really want a small one, you should contact him and see how small it should dare go, because it has some kind of a, there's a window where they work the best, and he's got that all worked out. So I'm within his window. So I never really paid much attention to that, but I know that there's a minimum and a maximum too that is most efficient and works best.
Yeah. So how many peaches do you think you're going to get out of that thing in 5 years?
Oh, in 5 years. Oh, I should have a bushel in 5 years. I'm hoping so. I'm working with different nurseries in California that are growing, fantastic fruit. My idea now that I've been delayed a year on my construction and everything, I'm planning to go to California and just do some taste tests, do my own taste tests. And since this is the only time I'm planning to do this, I'm not 20 anymore, so I haven't got time to do a lot of experimenting. I'd like to really have it as close to good as I can get it to start with. And so I'm going to work with a lot of growers and nursery people to get their best guess on what will perform well in this type of a greenhouse situation, and then follow their instructions. So we're still working out the details of that, but that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, great. Robin had a question. How many days of sunshine do you have in Big Sandy?
Oh, that's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that, but all of Montana is averages. We probably, we're typical of eastern Montana. So on the prairie, I think we have more sunny days than they have in the mountains, but it's a lot, because I know the solar power people really, they focus on that, and we have great potential for that. So it's a couple hundred, I'm pretty sure, but I don't know the exact number, but it's good. It's good. And even Russ said, even the cloudy days, you'll have enormous amount of heat generated by the sun coming through the clouds, unless it's, like really, really thick clouds maybe. But I'm going to put up several thermometers at different levels in the greenhouse and keep some pretty good records the first year or two before the plants are very big, and just see what the temperature fluctuation is like compared to the outside temperature and the sun intensity. Those will all be factors, and we can see what we can get away with. Most people have some auxiliary heat just in case. I'm still not convinced. I might not. I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. If I do, my propane tank's really close. I can put in a propane heater that could be turned on in dire emergency of something failing or something. I'll have it wired for electricity, so I could always use a little electric heat to augment the heat needs. But from what I've read and seen from most of them, the problem that most of them had is cooling, not heating. So that is where most of the comments are. The way this is set up, the heat bank that you have from being mostly underground, or almost half underground, that really moderates the temperatures and stabilizes the temperature quite significantly. So we'll just see what we need.
Yeah, great. And did you ever have a chance to go over to Three Forks and visit the greenhouse over there that's subterranean?
Not yet, but they're on my list, and I understand there's one in Conrad too that I'd like to go see. There's been a couple kits sold right up here in north central Montana out by Belt, but found out that they haven't erected theirs yet. So they're kind of the same situation I am. So I was kind of disappointed when I heard that, but there are a few around. I've only visited the ones in Nebraska. There's 2 or 3 that were right near Russ's place, and I visited those. I've had oranges out of Russ's I've tasted right off the tree that he's had and showed and shared with me, and that was really a lot of fun. So I think it'll be great fun, and it'll be some recreation. I'm going to have on the rest of it, so I have 11 feet out of the 17 that's designated to grow the trees, but the remaining 6 feet will be divided between a sidewalk and, of course, walls, the inner walls. But on the south side of the ground, the sidewalk right next to the south side of the wall will be a 2-foot wide garden bed or vegetable bed. So I can raise some vegetables through the winter in that 2-foot wide garden bed. And that'll be up nearly at ground level, right next to the plastic where they let the sun in. So that would be another source of experimenting and seeing what will work there, and what certainly will be able to extend the season on several plants, and some things don't grow well during the winter, even with the right temperatures, because of the light intensity is so low when the sun is getting similar to what it is now, and from now through the next 5 or 6 or 7 weeks till days start getting longer again.
Yeah. A couple more questions here. One, why do you think this hasn't happened before now?
Well,
I don't know if that's related to you. Maybe before we get to that, let's, Robin, could you bring up the photo of the one that's in existence? And this is a picture of one in Utah. Kind of an idea of what it's going to look like from the outside. And then the third slide is got a whole bunch of references to different ones, and this one is referenced in that they do a really great job of keeping updates every couple of weeks on what's going on in their greenhouse. They've had it going for a couple of years. So back to the question, why not until now?
well, we could ask the same question. Why are we not 100% organic?
Yeah, we sure could.
Why are we not even 5% organic? There's several different reasons. It's a new concept. It's not brand new, but it's a little bit unusual. It takes some resources, not extreme amount. It certainly is cheaper than a tractor, most tractors. And there's not a lot of material. I mean, you were telling Russ's story. That was only been a few decades ago when everybody thought he was crazy. And now he's been able to demonstrate that this really works. So once people start demonstrating things are workable, then the interest grows. And that's what I like to do. I like to take ideas that are maybe on the edge and a lot of people say won't work. I love it when people tell me I can't do something or it won't work, because then I say, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
It's an incentive for me to figure it out. Especially
renegade that you are.
Yeah.
And another question about why not hook it to the house and use the passive solar?
Well, the way I'm set up on our farm, I don't have that would be a good idea. And that's actually what Russ has done with his first one. But the layout of my house and my barns and everything don't really, oh, there's a picture of a standalone one in Utah, but don't really allow for that. And that wasn't one of my main goals. Although if I was starting from scratch and to build a homestead from nothing, that would be a great idea. I think that would be something to do for sure, because you're going to have a lot of extra heat in this. I built mine right on the north side of a big storage shed. Well, you saw in my picture, I think you'd see the one wall of the shed that it goes down almost the entire north side, so that I'm protected from north winds, and I think that it will help me with the cooling effect in the dead of it. And I'm thinking that if I would ever put a shop inside, a partial shop inside that building, I could use the heat from the passive solar heat to heat that shop area. So I do have an idea to use some of the extra heat for the future, but I don't have it hooked up to the house because it wasn't, logistics wasn't there.
Yeah, this particular greenhouse, Trail Break Farm, does have a system set up to run heat into a shop. Um,
Mhm.
but you know, for me, if I were starting over, I wouldn't even build a house. I'd just live in the greenhouse.
It would be like living in like a
I know,
garden.
yeah, yeah. I know that Jerome Osentowski, who has a different form of greenhouse down in Utah or in Colorado at basalt, about 7,000 feet, and has done this kind of stuff, but with a different strategies and techniques. He has done a lot of living in one of his greenhouses, and he has a sauna in it that really does a lot more of the heat stuff, and a loft above the sauna, and has a bed on it and stuff. You know, and to anyway, that would be my plan. Would be to really.
It sounds great.
Uh, I mean, yeah. So, you know, one of your big themes in your life has been to really give nutrient dense whole food without any kind of toxicity, and just, you know, all the love and care that you can possibly give it, and pass that out to the world through the products that you grow. And so I'm wondering, you know, I imagine you'll be pretty busy um, rationing out the fruit that you're not eating to guests. I'm hoping to be one of them. Uh, and just wondering, you know, how many guests do you think you're going to be able to feed uh, in a year once you get going good?
Well, that's a good question. I'm trying to grow all my own food now. Personally, I'm up to about 85% of everything I eat. Is from our farm, and with adding fruits that we can't grow here normally, that would boost that even higher. It's a little bit easier to feed guests Kamut sourdough pancakes because I have a whole bin of that, and I can just turn the grinder on a little longer and grind as much flour as you can get around the table anyway. Pretty easy. With an orange tree, you're only going to have so many oranges, and when they're gone, you have to wait till next year. So that remains to be seen. I'm sure that whatever we have, we're going to share with whoever shows up. So they'll last as long as
Yeah.
they last, and then we'll wait till next year. But what I really want to have is enough variety of things, so things are coming ripe through the whole season. I've been able to plant berries now, and with my fruit trees, I have fresh fruit from the end of May. That's when the strawberries first get started, through October when the first real freezes, and the apples and the pears at the end of the season for my orchard. But the berries go from strawberries continuously to raspberries, and then to Cyrus berries or Saskatoon berries, and then into several other types of well, those are the main ones. And then we have choke cherries, and the last berries we have are buffalo berries, which are ready in late September. So we have berries now that can continue us, we can eat off of almost the whole growing season. And once the apples start in late July, I have one variety that's very, very early and starts producing late July. We have apples from late July to mid April now, or mid October. I mean, mid October. So we have all of August, all of September, and parts of July and parts of October. So we have almost 2.5 months of apples now, and the pears are kind of at the end of that. We have some plums that's sort of at the beginning of that. We have sour cherries that's coming on early July to mid July, and we add those to the berries I talked to you about. And then we have grapes that are coming on sometime in August. So we're able to have fruit to supplement our vegetables that are starting with, let's see, first vegetables we eat, there's asparagus, and we're having asparagus in early May. Well, and rhubarb is also an early vegetable. We have a tradition in our family. My great grandfather's birthday was on the 1st of May, and he always got a rhubarb pie. So we continue, even though he's long gone. He was born the year he died the year I was born, but we try to continue that tradition. And if we don't have too late of a spring, we have rhubarb pie or rhubarb cobbler on May Day. So that's the beginning, and we're eating parsnips out of our garden whenever it's not froze solid. So we can be eating something out of our garden whenever we can get to it. And the root cellar takes our storage vegetables, and we can eat those fresh throughout the whole winter. So my goal is to eat off the farm over the whole season, all 12 months, really can be done.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you know, I know one of the conversations we had, you were saying something about what you think something like this could do for a small town like Big Sandy, if some younger entrepreneur got excited about doing this sort of stuff. So what are your thoughts around that?
Well, I've talked to Russell a little bit about that too, and there's been some commercialization of these, not too much. Mostly they've been for hobbyists, but there's a few now have been erected for commercial purposes. And he was estimating for a town like Big Sandy, we probably, with 2 or 3 of these, we could probably supply most of the vegetables through the season and the off season. It remains to be seen how many vegetables really will go through the winter, because as I already talked about with the sun intensity. But if you really were commercial, you could add light, I suppose, to it and increase that light intensity, and maybe have tomatoes and other things going into the winter if you want to do that. I think that most people do leafy greens in the winter. Kale and spinach and those kinds of things. They're a little easier to do. They're not a fruit. You don't have to worry about blooming and growing a fruit in the winter with vegetables like that. But that remains to be seen. That's one of the things I'm going to be kind of taking a look at, John, and trying some different ones and really see which has the most potential of being harvestable throughout the winter season.
Yeah, I know that one of the pieces of information that Russ uses about the economic viability of it is off-season fruit. You know, that he has Meyer lemons when there aren't Meyer lemons from other places, and so can get a premium price for it.
Right.
And Max was wondering about, you know, so how many of these would it take and I know this is just speculation, to produce the fruit for Big Sandy?
No, I don't know the answer to that until I see what the production is going to be. But we're going to have. It depends on the tree spacing that we end up with, because there's lots of different theories about that. I originally started out with the idea of having 6 trees in my peach room and 11 trees in my citrus room, my orange room. But people have told me, oh, you can crowd them a lot closer than that. That's giving them space for about 8 feet between the trees. And some people say you can go 4 or even 2. And other people have said, well, you can also increase the diversity by grafting. And so you can graft 2 or 3 different trees on a single tree. And that way you could maybe only have room for 1 peach tree in my peach room, but I have 4 different peaches on that 1 tree. Or if I plant them closer together in trenches or whatnot and keep them well pruned, maybe I have 4 small trees in an area that I really was thinking I only have 1 tree in. So it depends how I end up with the final experiment and seeing how many will really be viable and maybe what's the best spacing. And that's going to take some experimenting or some pretty intensive advice that I'll be seeking here in the next a few months from my friends in California, at least. I think those are good questions that need to be answered. That would be a very help to those in the field. And that would answer some of what Max is asking you, what's the total output? Because 2 trees, if you'll get a crowding effect, so that you're starting to decrease your yield, but not immediately. So that as you start to increase the number of trees, you'll initially get some increase in yield. But if they get too crowded, then you're not going to increase your yield anymore. And so that there's a maximum limit. And so you want to be somewhere below that where the trees are not pushing and crowding and, under stress. You don't want the plants just like people. You don't want them under stress. Stressed out plants, just like stressed out people, get sick, and you don't want that. And they're more susceptible to disease and everything else. They're already going to be under a little stress with such an artificial system. And you want to have not add to that stress. And that's, if we get, I put in my pitch for organic every time I can, but that's the big factor with chemical agriculture, is putting plants under a huge amount of stress in abnormal growing rates to get these big yields and big plants with all this artificial fertilizer and all this stuff. That stress makes those plants more susceptible to disease and insects, which then requires more pesticides to control those. And it's just a vicious cycle. It just gets worse and worse. And a much better approach is to have healthy plants in the first place, and focus on high nutrition in food rather than high yield in food. If we could be focusing on nutrients per acre rather than pounds per acre, we're gonna have healthier people, and in the end, the farmers can be paid premiums for that. And it'll be the same in the greenhouses too, if these can be shown to be viable for commercial operations here in Montana.
Yeah. A couple other questions. One was, what about pollinators? This is, pollination is this question that Russ gets asked every day.
Sure. And I think we're going to be looking at bumblebees and little nests of, Russ has some of those that take up residence after a while. We'll have to see what will adapt themselves to this environment the best. Probably be a different group for the zone 10 than it is for zone 6 for the 2 different rooms. I don't know. We'll certainly have windows open in the summertime where pollinators can come in. But then you also have maybe some unwanted insects coming in too. Like this year, grasshoppers got into my little greenhouse because I didn't have any screens over the windows. And that was not a good thing after they started to have enough increase in numbers that ate up my basil, for example. That wasn't fun. So you have to be careful and kind of think ahead of who you want in and who you don't want in. We have a lot of pollinators here in the prairie that really aren't bumblebees or honeybees or anything like that. They're wasps, or they're different types of insects that really are contributing to pollination, but aren't the normal kind of bees that you think about as important pollinators. But they are important. I see them in my orchard just buzzing around in higher numbers, way higher numbers than I see bumblebees and other kinds of bees.
Yeah. So how far north have they been built?
Oh, there's some up, I think, between Regina and Saskatoon, some up near Calgary, so way further north than we are. And boy, the sun is a really low angle up there in the winter time. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how they're focusing as far as what they're growing, in the midwinter as compared to just expanding on the seasons, on either end of the seasons. Some people, that's their main focus, is just expanding the season rather than trying to take everything year round, clear through, as far as production goes.
Yeah. So, and one of the other things that I know in your book and on your website, you talk about, and in anytime you get a chance to talk about it, is how we need to change the cheap food policy, and wondering how that conversation might fit into growing Well, it's part of, you know, you're saying we really have to pay attention to nutrient density rather than volume, that it's the quality. And once we start looking at that, then the economics, what we look at economically changes in our health and well-being and a whole lot of other things. You want to take a minute to
Well,
just
when people,
expound?
you know, being organic, a lot of times we're attacked for creating an elitist food system that only the rich people can afford. And I always answer that question with my own question back to say, well, how much does it cost to be sick? It really costs a lot to be sick. And it doesn't matter if you're wealthy or poor. If you're sick, you got to be treated, especially, you know, life or death. That's just, you have to do something. And anytime you talk about the cost of food, I think you're only talking about half of the equation, and the other half is health. And the cost of health and the cost of food should always be combined to see what the total is. And that total is a little less than 30% of most incomes and what's spent on those two together. But the ratio that you spend them on depends entirely on what kind of food that you put in your body. If you're putting in the cheapest food you can find, then you can be assured that your health care is going to be the majority of those two combinations. If you're focusing on high quality food, high nutrient density food, you might be paying a little more for that, but you're more than making up for the savings that you have in your health care. And I'm talking broad generalities now, particularly in chronic diseases. Chronic disease, 60% of chronic disease is due to poor diets and poor lifestyles, and that can be changed. That's a choice, and that can be eradicated or modified or helped with better diets. And we don't want to perpetuate the reason we have cheap food is because of the system that was created to produce it. And the farmers, you look all over Montana, you don't have to go very far, and you find people are in dire straits of this cheap food policy. Farmers can hardly pay for the inputs that create all this cheap food. It's in vast supply. We have adequate food. We have enough to eat. No, I shouldn't say nobody, but you know, generally the country isn't under starvation, although there's pockets of hunger everywhere for sure. But the biggest problem, a bigger problem we have is a hunger for nutrients and nutrient density and having nutrient dense foods. And that is causing the health trouble. And to separate those two then makes it hard to justify increasing the price of food. But if you're going to have farmers that you want to start with farmers that are viable and pay the fair price for what they grow, then if they grow something that is higher value and creates better health, then you can afford to pay them more because you're taking out of the money you're saving in healthcare. If you're just going to focus on industrial model, then it's hard to justify. The industrial model says grow as much as possible, pay you as little as possible, and you make it up on a vast size with small margins. And for those that are in good shape, that's the only way they're doing it, with vast sizes on very small margins, and then with the size that they're able to be viable. But average sizes or smaller sizes just are not viable on small margins.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Bob. One of the things that has fascinated me about this is the possibility of a group of people collaborating on a greenhouse like this and running it and eating out of it collectively as both a way of having food, and the other is having an opportunity to learn how to work together on something that is really life-serving.
Yeah, it's a community idea and concept, and we've almost lost that. When I was a kid growing up, we shared machinery with our neighbors. We didn't have everything we needed. We worked together in branding because it took more people, but we shared some machinery like binders and rakes and things that we didn't use all the time for haying equipment. We shared because we only we could do that each individually and still get our hay up or our oats bound or whatever we needed. And that worked really well, swathers, that sort of thing. That's almost disappeared. Everybody has their own now. They're so big that they're just going all the time just to get the work done. And so the community working together has really suffered, I think. We don't really have that so much anymore. And the kind of thing you're talking about would be a kind of a reinstitution of that on even a small scale. Especially that would work well in more urban areas. That would be a fantastic thing to put on the edge of town where 3 or 4 families could go together and do something in walking distance of their house or very short drive and work together on. It's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting that this call is this day because I'm not on my computer because where I am doesn't have computer connection, and I am at a home outside of Red Lodge that has equipment to cut up meat. Oh. And so the last couple of years I've been coming over, and it doesn't belong to my friends, but they have a couple of animals that they have for eating and selling small amounts, and they don't like to cut it up all by themselves, and so I get to come over and help them cut up these animals and look at the quality of them, because they're all, people say you can't grow beef without finishing them on grain, and these 2 animals that we're cutting up today and tomorrow are as marbled as any 2-year-old in any feedlot. They're just beautiful. And but it's just really fun to come and help them out and to have that camaraderie and community energy and feeling like we're really doing something that is worthwhile in our lives. And there's a young kid that's they're just helping out, being part of it. And so, yeah.
Well, I saw Robin raising her hand a while ago, but I don't know if she got a chance to speak or not.
Well, she's been listing.
Yeah, I had my hand up.
Max, you go. Go, Max.
I had my hand up. So, a couple things. So, Bob, back when you were talking about the food system and the price, I've always thought that, and you could do this because you cross the political, divides. I just have not understood why you couldn't get a significant cohort of Republicans in the Congress, and you come to them with this argument that, look, you guys hate Medicare, right? You hate Medicaid. If I offered you a way to cut the Medicaid budget in half in 10 years, would you help me?
Yeah.
And they'd say, gosh, sure. And the way and then you'd give them your spiel about cheap food and disease and how to get, nutrient dense food per acre as a metric as opposed to pounds per acre. And I think that thing could actually change overnight. It'd be incredible.
I really think, I agree. If we can tie food and health, we could reconnect those ideas. Then that's apolitical. That crosses all the political boundaries. But
they have such heartburn in the Republican Party about those costs, and you can say, I can cut that in half for you
that's
tomorrow.
Right.
And here's how we do it.
Here's the trouble.
So the other piece of that, though, well, go ahead.
Well, maybe you're going to get to it. The trouble is more than the political parties. The trouble is the people who are making so much money from the system the way it is now. And most of those guys don't care who's in power because they know how to work with both parties and still maintain their influence. I think that if we could ever disconnect their influence with all the parties in Washington, then we would have a quicker chance, because those guys have lots of money and they don't want to see change. They don't want to see anything change.
Yep.
The agriculture, industrial, chemical
Yep.
complex on one side, and the pharma and big pharma on the other side.
Right.
Those are the two.
Yeah, that'll be tough. So the other piece of this was, though, I've been listening in on a lot of these coffee and happy hour things, and we heard the other night about distribution. There was a guy who was up in Lodgepole on was it Fort Belknap, Robin?
Yep.
I think.
Yes.
And he was just talking. They have a small trading post that they kind of had to reinvent after the one grocer kind of pulled out of town, and the difficulty they had just getting stuff when COVID hit, distribution wise. And when you were describing the greenhouse, and once proof of concept is proved, every one of these communities is going to be able to get a good quality food supply at a much cheaper rate than all the federal aid and everything else that we're talking about here. And I just, if you look, and Robin posted a bunch of resources in this, from what is to what if, what if every small struggling rural community had a number of these greenhouses and much more education about nutrient-dense food? I think it would just be amazing.
Yeah, and it's also jobs. People could have some work right in their little town and their rural, wherever they're at. And that's the other thing it's hard to find, are jobs. And I think this would be a fantastic opportunity for more jobs locally in rural communities. And it's really funny because we also get kind of lambasted for our organics ideas. They say, "Oh, this is so much more work." I said, "It's not more work; it's more jobs." And it's just the way we look at things. Let's look at them in a community sense. It's it's more work if you're going to try to do it all yourself. But if you're making more money, you can afford to hire more people to help you, and then everybody benefits. It's a win-win-win situation. I think that's what we should really try for.
Just very quickly, this is Robin. I just want folks to know that the resources I provided are actually all provided by John Brown. All I did was copy and paste. So he did all the work, and so you can trust those. There are a couple more pictures on the slides. I apologize. I'm in an awkward place here and only have one screen, and finding it when I go to share is harder than I thought. But nonetheless, I can go back and show those other pictures that John put together if you want.
Robin, these resources in the chat, if we go back and watch the recording, does the chat stay in the recording?
The chat stays in the record. They're not part of the recording, but I do have the chat boxes saved.
Oh, good.
And we can put these, we can certainly put these in the, on a resource list on the website. And you can copy these yourself, just copy paste. But yeah, so you can, I just wanted you guys to be able to grab them.
Thanks, Robin.
Yeah.
How are we doing on time?
So it is just about 6:25. So we've gone over from the allotted, technical time. I'm happy to stay on. Some of our conversations go 6:30, 6:45, 7, entirely up to you all. But for anyone who wants to leave, the 45 minutes have gone by. So technically we end at 6:15. I'm good to continue, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time.
Well, for those of you who have to leave, thank you very much for stopping by, and much success to you, and anything we can do to help you, we're glad to do it. And I don't have anything pressing except for dinner at some point. So anyway, I'm happy to stay if there's a couple more questions to take care of.
I have some questions. I've looked into, I'm just so thrilled that you're building this, Bob, just because I've wanted to see one here in Montana. I've been to a number of the other ones around Montana, and I've seen a couple different versions, but I haven't seen this greenhouse in the snow version. And I looked into it pretty significantly on behalf of a health food store that was wanting to make therapeutic grade juices as part of a nutritional therapy program. It's you know, just like many things, it just kind of ended up on hold somewhere. I think they lost their land that they were going to purchase, so it all got kind of put on hold. But yeah, because one of the things for nutritional therapies where, you know, you need to have as fresh fruit as possible and juice it and ingest it within an hour. Imagine being able to just literally harvest that food in the wintertime and take it in right away. Anyways, I'm just really thrilled. I think there's a lot of opportunity here.
I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be fun too. So it'll be worthwhile. There'll be some fun aspects and some educational aspects too. So it'll be fun.
I mean, it is different. It's not like you are not growing in Florida in winter here, you know. Everything slows down. But
Yeah. Okay, now my mother is calling me. Let me tell her I'm going to be a little late, and I'll be right back with you.
That's hysterical. Oh my.
You want to show the slides, Robin?
Yeah, sure. Here I go. I have to find them again. I just got way too many things open here. What do I have to do first? I think I have to share my screen first. And I have to find it. And then I hit full screen. Okay, so this is where, excuse me. This is where we were. This is the next slide. And I guess, is this the modified?
Yeah, this is inside and the one in Utah.
Nice.
And this is last summer, early in the summer, I think, or maybe during midsummer.
Nice.
And so, you know, they haven't got any of their trees planted in the ground yet. They're still in containers, but they're growing, and they're reporting on how things are growing and how the greenhouse functions and how sunlight changes and how things grow differently in the front of the greenhouse in the summer and in the winter, and the back wall is a big difference when in the summer it doesn't get a lot of light there, and so things don't grow. One of the things that they have, there's a dragon fruit, and it wasn't growing very much in the summertime, whereas the one in the front was growing really well. But now that the angle of the sun is down, it's getting direct sunlight, it's really started to take off. So just a few little things, you know, that experience is going to teach you.
And then there's this one.
Then this one is Joe and Brenda Clark's up at Summers.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a lot of information about what they're doing as well.
Yeah, this is a modified shipping container.
Yes.
And he actually, God bless him, he during the lockdown of COVID, you know, between February and April, when he built the first one, as I understand it, he was not happy with the outcome of his climate battery, and he built this a number of years ago. So during COVID, he just spent 2 months digging up that entire one section of his climate battery, and I don't know, significantly increasing the amount of piping that he put in there to get the result he wanted. And so now he's quite happy with it. But you know, my takeaway is you want to have that figured out well before you go ahead and start.
Yeah, and that's what, you know, one of the things that Russ emphasizes. He says, you know, do it the way we've done it and worked out so many bugs until you get some experience, and then do your innovation. Don't do your innovation before you have any experience with it. We've taken a lot of hits because of the what we didn't know, and now we know a lot more. And so use the wisdom that we've gained, and then change things when you've got some experience.
Yeah, there's some really great videos on Joe Clark's website, on his YouTube channel, which is called How to Farm and Garden, and I put that in the chat box. But it's worth he's a videographer anyways, so he's got some really great videos, and he's done a lot of tours of his facility. Yeah. And I think that's the last picture. The rest of these slides are all that information that's in your chat box. I don't know if you want to go through any of this, John, or.
Not necessarily. I think that, well, one of the things that is really interesting is the piece on microforests that I just found out here recently that a gentleman from Japan developed. It's down toward the, right on the bottom of that screen. And they're able to pump all kinds of carbon into the soil, growing really densely planted trees. And people are doing, these microforests in their backyards, small spaces, and getting phenomenal results, both from the benefits of having that diversity of trees growing in your environment, that you don't have to walk, you don't have to drive, outside of the city limits to find a forest. It's right in, right out your back door. And so very inspiring. I haven't seen one. I've only watched some YouTubes and have gotten his book about it, but very inspiring for someone who's in an urban environment and has a little space, or has access to a park in a city.
So what I'm getting from this, guys, is I could see a one day. I mean, what we're learning from these virtual conferences is that, one, you can get great content up even if not everybody is there when you're doing it live. I see a one-day conference on this concept maybe in February. I mean, this has got so much potential for Montana, and there's all these other resources that John was just talking about. You could get people so excited on the possibilities of some of the stuff. It'd be really interesting to put something like that together.
Yeah, February would be a good time.
And what is truly amazing to me is that, the financial outlay is nominal for what you can produce, compared to how much you could spend on a greenhouse. So that's what makes it really viable, I think, for so many people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so
we'll definitely lean into that. There's some good opportunities here, and there's a lot of wonderful information.
Great.
Cool.
Well, I don't know if Bob is still with his mom or not.
Oh, I'm here. I told her I'd call back.
Well, Bob, I just thinking here, I wish I had the opportunity to take a call from my mom.
Yeah.
But thanks so much for sharing your vision here, Bob, and for showing up here. You've been quite involved with this virtual conference and Aero Annual Meeting Expo, and it's been great. And I don't know if there are any other questions anybody has. And if not, maybe we'll close this down and hand out the Aero Expo.
Looking for that virtual conference.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Good job, everybody. You guys did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you. It was really great participation. We learned a lot.
Good.
So, all right, well, we'll let everybody go and have their dinner and enjoy. And thanks for attending the expo. And we'll do some follow-up and let you know kind of where you can find the resources and some steps we'll be leaning into as a result.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Max,
John.
and everyone else who's on the
Great.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.